Good evening, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us. Once again, you are joining Pont de Politique on this wonderful Sunday of the 19th of March, 2023. Uthando lwethu kadlanga, umntu ngawuyongayo malinge, undima kankumbuzo. Welcome you to this yet another wonderful conversation. It is wonderful for me because I know the type of people that I will be having as guests today. So whoever that is watching with us, I can see that there are some few people that are already joining us. You are already on Pont de Politique. Many of you keep on asking us, what does this Pont de Politique mean? It is a French word, or it's a French phrase that means a bridge to politics. Welcome then if you're watching with us on YouTube. There are the details. Make sure that you subscribe on our channel. It would be good to have a bigger reach and a greater number of followers who are part and parcel of this conversation. And if you are also watching with us on Twitter, here is our details at Pont de Politique. And also there, I am available as your host on Twitter at ODGuy1. There it is. You can follow us there. You can tweet, you can retweet, you can like, and do whatever that you want, and make sure that we are all part and parcel of the conversation. And also on Facebook, at Pont de Politique on Facebook, you can send us a friend request, you can send us an inbox, you can DM us in whatever way that you feel it is important and it is easier for you. And on Instagram as well, we are equally available. Lastly, but not least, we are available on Twitter, on TikTok, sorry. But importantly, for you guys who are watching with us, please, I'm pleading with you, make sure that you subscribe to our Pont de Politique channel. Today, we are going to be having a wonderful conversation with a wonderful group of people. These two guests of mine will be talking about the day that is known as Human Rights Day in South Africa, but for some people it is known as a Sharpeville Massacre Day. On the 21st of March, 1960, a political party by the name of Pan-Africanist Congress, led by Robert Mangaliso Sobukwe, organized a positive action campaign protest. And this positive action campaign protest was rolled out in the many urban cities of, urban towns of South Africa, from the Western Cape to the Eastern Cape to Gauteng and various places. But unfortunately, majority of the time, not much was therefore known in other parts of the country because of the number of people who were involved in that. Firstly, in the Western Cape on the day in question, there was a protest, positive action campaign march that took place on the 21st of March. But it was only later that evening at 5 o'clock that when they came back at the Langa Square, that there was a number of people that was murdered. But 9 days later, on the 30th of March, Philip Hosana, the regional secretary of the PAC, a comrade of Robert Mangaliso Sobukwe, who was a student at UCT at the time, organized one of the biggest marches that has ever been organized in the history of politics in this country and in this continent. And that march had over 25,000 people, African men, walking to the city center of Cape Town. Unfortunately, the curriculum of our country in the post-democratic society tends to mismatch these numbers. It could be deliberate, or it could be a situation of ignorance. That is one thing or the other. On the other side, there is a part where majority of the historians or the people don't know about it. In Pretoria, at the Hercules police station, there was also another protest by the PAC members. One of the people who was leading that is Ndade Elias Ntlodibe. Ntate Elias Ntlodibe led a group of about 15 to 20 protesters, which was not a successful march in Hercules. They got arrested. Ntate Ntlodibe and his group were then charged for inciting violence, and from that day onwards, they were then imprisoned 1 year. And 1 year later, Ntate Ntlodibe skipped the country, went into Lesotho. That was the beginning of his life in exile. Another aspect was in Orlando, where Ntate Sobukwe was at. And also there was a significant number, a handful number of people, men and young men, who became part and parcel of that particular protest, positive action campaign that was enrolled by the PAC in 1960. That also resulted in a large number of people being arrested, Sobukwe being one of them. And this has led to what Ngukai Toby speaks about when he talks about 23 people who stood in the dock, and Robert Sobukwe was then their spokesperson and also their representative. This led to him, Sobukwe, being speaking on behalf of his comrades, saying that we are not going to plead because we can't plead to an unjust law. And then there is a bigger march. There is a bigger one that is known, the one that we're going to be talking about today, the Sharpeville aspect. The Sharpeville aspect was led by a man named Nyakane Tsulu. Nyakane Tsulu, in his later years, went to exile, and he spent majority of his time in Netherlands. So that aspect, that part, was the biggest part because it involved a large number of people who were shot and killed unarmed by the SAP police. And those people were, one, they were unarmed; two, they were in a peaceful protest; three, they were demanding dignity for themselves. Now, those people, the official number that has been presented by the police is that there were 89, but I mean, there were 69, sorry. But 2022, there was a research that was done, and it has actually given us that the number was higher than that. It could be even closer to 100, with over 200 people being injured. I know that one of our guests might be able to give us a story on this particular issue. So there at Sharpeville, then there was a bigger aspect. Sobukwe talks about it, and he says he felt sad that people were killed in Sharpeville. So today, what we're going to be talking about, that was a historical narrative that was giving a summation of that historical narrative. But I want to talk to our guests as in relation to the issues of how do they view this. And Thabang Molibeti is a filmmaker who is going to be talking to us about and how he views this particular day, this particular massacre. And probably he could even give us what we say that a picture that is behind the scenes. And then we would have Dana on the other side, giving us what one would say a perspective of how we must view this particular day today. Because young people, most of the time, they tend to say, why do you tend to want to always talk about the past? The past is the past. So I'm going to welcome Thabang into the group and into the live stream. And immediately after that, when Thabang is introducing himself and is presenting his issue, then we will put in our sister Tanya Mohammed or Tanya Mahoka into the live stream. Thabang, my brother, how are you?
I'm good, and you? I'm good. I'm very good. I can't complain. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Thank you, man, for joining us. And we appreciate, and I'm sure our guests and I mean our viewers appreciate the fact that you are with us. And I know that people might say that you are in the dark. We all know that it's a load shedding or it's blackout, whatever you want to call it. Some people give it a nice name. So who is Thabang and what does Thabang do in his professional and private life?
Well, Tabang is a filmmaker and an activist who stays in Sharpeville, who has been staying in Sharpeville I was born here basically. I also run VAL movie screenings, outdoor movie screenings, where we do screenings outdoors almost every on weekends and particularly on month ends. So yes, Tabang, that's basically what I'm professionally, and I have one son. I'm a father of one son, Akahang Sobukwe with the baby. And then yes, I'm a single parent. Yep, that's basically me.
And for what you do, Tabang, is you've been a film producer and you've done some work on the Sharpeville. Is that so?
Yes, yes, I produced a documentary called Echoes of My Past about 5 years ago. Echoes of My Past is the personal history on the Sharpeville massacre, where one of the ladies, Matuka, meets and talks with the survivors and the victims of the massacre itself. So it's quite an emotional documentary about what really happened on the 1960, and then we get to find that not only was there 69 people who were killed, it was actually more people who were killed, and then
Yeah.
something that came up, there were also two funerals. The media gives us the one view of one funeral that took place, but actually there were two funerals that took place on that day, and
Wonderful.
research is still going. No has been discovered of people who died on that day, and there was another burial that took place in Bethlehem, I think. So and then
Okay.
people when that happened, we started to see that there were other funerals, more funerals in the people that happened. It was not only this funeral that we see that the mainstream talks about that we see. There were about 3 to 4 funerals that took place.
No, that's wonderful. Let's bring in Tana as well. Tana, good evening, or is it afternoon? Good afternoon. How are you?
Hi there, I'm good. How are you?
We are doing good. What do you do, Tana, as a community activist? What type of work that you do mainly?
Well, a little bit of everything. Our main focus is on education with young people in townships across Gauteng, but then also take an interest in research and building networks and policy.
Okay, and if one were to talk about you in relation to Sharpeville and the Sharpeville massacre, what is your relationship with that?
Well, I always say, one should start at the beginning. So I am the child of parents, particularly my dad, who was very involved in the struggle in the 70s and the 80s. In fact, the very first political figure that he told me about was Robert Sobukwe. And from that time, I've just been absolutely, in awe and admiration of who he was as a person and what he was able to accomplish. And so obviously, the start of that significance is the Sharpeville massacre as part of this protest against the past laws. But everything that happens after that, which we will talk about today, magnifies the significance of what he had done.
So basically, the type of people that we have brought into this conversation, viewers, is that they are involved one way or the other in the story of Sharpeville massacre. Now, before we can go very far, I want you, Tabang, to just give us a little bit, as you have already started, so that we can be able to provide a little bit of insight for those people who have never heard the information that you are speaking about. You spoke about 2 funerals, and you spoke about other things that other people were not seeing. What are those things? What are those things that you would like the viewers to understand? But also, Tanya, if there is a question or a point that you want to put across as Tabang is talking, this is a conversation. And also you, the viewers, you can put across your comments and your questions as and when we are having a conversation. So Thabang, give us your outlook of the day as a film producer and how you saw it.
Look, we live here every day, and then what's very disturbing us is that Sharpeville gets only to be known on this day, and then we get the day gets very busy. I mean, if you can see today, there are a lot of police. There's lots of policemen in and out of Sharpeville. You know, we're seeing law and order only on this day. What in Sharpeville. And it's a very sad it's a very sad reality actually of what is happening right now in Sharpeville about the day itself. You must remember Sharpeville it used to be a very industrialized place that housed many people from Lesotho, actually from Lesotho, Malawi, and other places as an industrial hub for black miners and black labor. And what's very surprising or very saddening is that even today, you know, it's one of the most unemployed places. You know, this is one of the highest unemployment rate in Fuleni. So and then the day is very sad, is a sad reality of what these people, of what our mothers and fathers died for, you know, and seeing what's happening around Sharpeville. And going to the day itself, as I was documenting it, one of the things that came up was that there was a lady who was pregnant who was shot and while she was pregnant, and then even still today we're still trying to find out her story and where the child is today, because she was not accounted for and actually died on the day. And so it was a very saddening story. Hello?
Can I interject there for 1 second?
Okay.
I find that quite fascinating, this idea that you could be so severely affected by what had happened on that day, but not be accounted for, as you said. One of the most important aspects of heritage and memorialization is this idea that we bear witness to the trauma of the past. So when you go to the current Sharpeville Memorial, right? It's this big museum, and outside they've got, you know, these plaques with all the names of people who had died. Now you're saying that there was more than 69. For those people who are family members or are known to the other people who had died, how do they feel when they walk past that plaque and their name isn't there?
Thabang, probably because you have been with people when you were doing your work, your research. How do they feel, those people who feel like they are not accounted for? Because there were actually two ladies who were pregnant who are not accounted for.
It's sad. I mean, people did not want to talk for quite some time, and they feel very sad. And actually, you must remember that even reparations did not do them any favor at all. I mean, I think some got about 30,000 rand and some did not get it. So it's a very long going pain for them. And some now they are very old, and almost every year we bury one of the victims of the massacre. I mean, about 2 weeks ago we buried Mema Mguni, who was one of the victims of the Sharpeville massacre. She was very famous in the documentaries that we made around Sharpeville. We buried her about last week. So they die with that pain that some of them were not even accounted for. But what is nice, what is happening is that there is an heritage organization that is trying to find more names of what happened, and they're trying to put that into the museum in Braamfontein. All the names in the museum in Braamfontein. I think it's the Constitutional Hill. So there is that ongoing research of what happened.
That is beautiful, and this gives us a beautiful.
So we are trying very hard in this side to actually make sure that
I see that your internet is unstable.
When I say we are, it's me and other.
Okay, continue, Thabang.
Can you say that again?
I'm saying continue. Your internet is unstable.
When I say we, there's a heritage group that is. I could not hear you clearly there.
You can continue.
Doc, I was saying that there's an organization called. Okay, there's a heritage site. There's an organization called Sharpeville Heritage and Tourism Association, which is busy doing most of the research. And so with that research, they want to put it into the museum at the Constitutional Hill. So there is a research, almost ongoing research. There are people from United States that came with more names. There's Nwaketi, Dr. Nwaketi, who's also doing research on Sharpeville. So there's more ongoing work on that, and also there's a tourism sector that's trying to make sure that at least the level of unemployment in Sharpeville, becomes a little.
Yeah. Thank you for that. This gives us a segue now to that as a community activist. I'm struggling to hear you. I'm really struggling to hear you because you keep on breaking. And this gives us a segue to get to Dana.
Right now.
Dana, as a community activist, how do you perceive this particular day, the 21st of March? I know that people now tend to put it and look at it as a Human Rights Day. But from your perspective, how do you perceive it?
Well, that's very problematic, that it is called Human Rights Day, right? I am not opposed to the concept of human rights in its entirety, but I think that, the whole of apartheid and what had happened with apartheid was obviously violating people's human rights. But every place and every massacre and every civic organization, trade union, political movement, whatever it may be, has a place in our liberation history and in our struggle, and they deserve to have their stories told. So I feel like it kind of neutralizes the story of the people when we give it this blanket term of Human Rights Day, right? What I also find problematic is that because it's called Human Rights Day and human rights as a concept and as a framework is sort of valorized as something that we should pursue, what we lose is understanding that it's also a day for us to be mourning the deaths of all these people that had either died, gone missing, or had been injured. Because we get into the celebration of this framework and we, go into schools and we talk about having to teach about human rights, and look, there's a place for that, and I think it should be part of life skills and history that we talk about human rights. But I think particularly on Sharpeville Day, we should be talking about Sharpeville and the specific significance of Sharpeville Day, and the lessons that we learn from that, because there are ongoing lessons that are continuing to be relevant that comes out of that day that is lost by calling it Human Rights Day. I also thought it was quite significant when, because I was making notes as Tabang was talking, that he said that, Sharpeville is this place that is quite marginalized, it's quite poor, it's high unemployment, and yet they only see activity and they only see government on that day every year. So, and it's because people don't have this wider contextual understanding of the significance of Sharpeville. And the thing about Sharpeville at the time, it's no accident that there was such a big march in that place. It's because it was a place that had a very deep political consciousness and a social consciousness of what was happening at that time. And they could give an analysis of what was wrong with apartheid, right? So by even reducing their political contribution to the one day which people got killed detracts from the fact that when you think about people power and people standing up against the regime, Sharpeville should be actually as a place, should be one of the places that we actually celebrate. And this idea of people power is something that comes up again and again and again when we think about political conditions in our country, social conditions in our country. And when we're looking for ideas for strategy and examples of things that worked well in the past, Sharpeville should be right up there in terms of looking for lessons, looking for models.
And what would you say are those particular lessons currently? And remember, tomorrow is the 20th of March. There's a national shutdown.
Yes, exactly.
That is led by the EFF.
Yeah.
So what would be those lessons that we are talking about? Because now these things are happening now. Mm-hmm. So what could be those lessons that you want people to learn from those strategies of Sharpeville and Langa?
So I would, if I could just, be given some indulgence in terms of time, because there's actually, I would say, two broad themes. The one is to look at specifically things that happened around that time in the 60s, right? And then the other theme would be to look at the conditions of today and how some of those things continue to have relevance. So if I had to think about what was happening at that time, you had, first and foremost, the first time we've had such a significant national protest action happening, which took a lot of organizing and a lot of effort to bring about. I mean, anybody who's ever done work with communities, whether it be socially or politically, will know how much work goes into organizing and mobilizing and educating people so that they understand the issues. And this is one of the things that Robert Sobukwe felt very strongly about. And it's one of the things that we don't talk about enough when we talk about Sharpeville. The leaflets that got printed, the community meetings that got held leading up to Sharpeville. Every person that participated did so with an understanding of the issues.
At the community
level. And he did not want to proceed without that. And he would make contact with all of the comrades across South Africa to make sure that community education has taken place before the action, that it wouldn't just be a day where we come out and do something, but it would be a day where we do so with the conscious awareness of, this is why I'm standing up. Because, at the time, protest was outlawed. You were not allowed to protest against the apartheid government. So you're taking that risk. You have to do so with an understanding of why that's important, right? Also, I mean, one of the classic examples of why Sharpeville Day is so important that people talk about is how Sobukwe used that to critique the law and the system of law that we had in the apartheid state at the time, right? But it doesn't actually just critique the law itself. It also critiques the lawmaking process. And what I feel comes out of one of the significant aspects of Sharpeville and Langa and Hercules and all the places, and I think Durban and other places where it was happening, is to say that we, the people, should be able to make the laws of our choosing. So this idea of direct involvement in lawmaking is something that still continues to be a moot point today. I mean, we recently went through a process where we were looking at electoral amendment acts and things, and this idea of direct versus proportional representation in the mix, right?
Yes, yeah.
So we don't have time to go into that. It's a whole topic by itself, but I mean, the roots of that and the echoes of that could even be seen in the strategy that Sobukwe was employing, right? What we also don't talk about is that it was partially successful in the sense that the past laws were actually suspended for 2 weeks, which is something that a Black person at the time, like before 21 March 1960, would not even have thought possible. Because you must understand, we started having past laws operational in this country since the 1800s. As a Black person, you could not go anywhere without permission since the 1800s. It was a reality in the same way that when we were living through COVID, going there somewhere without your mask was just impossible to think about. Right?
And your permit. Yeah. You have permits that we were carrying around.
Yeah.
If you want to go to a shop, it's only the shop and anywhere else. There's got like some form of a door pass.
Yeah. So this idea of this inevitability of this document, it was, the foundation of that was crumbling by the fact that it could be suspended for 2 weeks. So it put possibility now in the minds of Black people that actually the reality that we're seeing around us does not have to be a reality forever. And it's a reality that is created, and it is a reality that can be deconstructed.
And if you look at this, Dana, it's something that is very, I'm looking at Twitter at this moment.
Yeah.
I've got my critiques against the EFF. I've got my critiques against Julius as a leader. I've got my critiques about a lot of things. But have you noticed that over the past weekend, ever since there's a calling of a national shutdown, the issue of load shedding and blackouts has been suspended.
Yeah.
And there was a comment that I saw from somebody who said, what are you doing with this lot of electricity that is all of a sudden available?
Yeah.
And you see that there's a possibility of a change in this strategy. And when I'm looking at what you're saying here, look at Sharpeville today and learn from those strategies.
Yeah.
And from a community-based perspective, again, I hear something where you say, in relation to the law and the lawmaking process, everybody says, let's change and amend the Electoral Act.
Yeah.
And the Electoral Act amendment has been placed at the hands of the legislature.
Yeah.
Now, the legislature has settled that. And the people are sitting and waiting, and Musumai ends up saying that Mr. a political party because the people are not involved. So what would you say now that people can do as community-based people in relation to that particular involvement in being part and parcel of lawmaking process? All of these questions that I'm asking are relating to you being a community activist, and I know it's difficult. And my viewers don't think that Tabang is not with us. Tabang is struggling with his connection. So whenever I see that he's available, we will bring him in. Yeah. But your views on the point that I'm making around the issue of this lawmaking.
I haven't been overly involved with the process around the Electoral Amendment Act. But from the few meetings that I have gone to and some of the things that I've read, I feel that campaign, look, they didn't have a lot of time, right? And they had to they had to get strategic about what actions they could do in a short period of time. They also had to deal with the fact that actually these changes that are being advocated for is not really in the interest of political parties, so they had no incentive. So how do you incentivize political parties and politicians became a central point that needed to be discussed and strategized around. But what contribution I did make when I was in that meeting is to say that we need to have a two-pronged approach. We need this high-level work where you're working with parliamentarians and you're writing submissions and you're working with the parliamentary process, etc. And you're writing op-eds and you're looking at legal strategies. I mean, there is legal strategies in the works about how, this can be taken through the courts if certain outcomes are not met. But we need to have another aspect to this campaign that focuses much more on communities and makes it digestible, makes it understandable, outlines the key points for communities.
From the people's perspective.
From the people's perspective and why it's relevant to you, Because you have to look at the material conditions in the class and the classes in this country, right? We've got 75% of people in this country who are poor or working class, right? You have 20% who is middle class, right? And then 5% who are upper middle class and so. So for that 75%, they are largely excluded from the political process.
I see.
And from an understanding of how these processes work at a higher level. Some of it is just genuinely just not having the time because you're so focused on survival, right? But some of it is for those of us who are educated, for those of us that do have access to these processes and understand it, not taking the time to go there. To go to people, to find out when are the times that people are available at night or over the weekends, whatever, make childcare available so people can come, with, you know, the baby on the back or whatever. Figure out what is the way to make it work instead of saying, oh, well, this is just too difficult, we don't have enough time, and we're not going to do it. Yeah. And this is something that Sobukwe was very strong on. With all his organizers and all the communities that they were reaching out to, he wanted to know, are you someone who is embedded in the community? Do they know you, and do you understand the issues? Do you know how to speak to them? Do you speak the language of that place? So Sobukwe spoke a number of languages for that reason.
Yes, that's
so that he could communicate with people.
No, this is a very important thing, and viewers at home, and you can see that we are going around in these different aspects of this conversation, and I would like to hear from you, majority of those people who are watching with us, and I see there is a comment that is available for us, and that is coming from Zolani Zonyane, and this is the comment. I'm going to read it, and it says, one of the biggest misnomers with the current government is diluting these significant days and events to please their master. Not only Sharpeville that they want to write off in history. Look at June 16 as one other example. What is your view in what Zolani is saying?
Thank you so much for the comments, and I agree. June 16 is also a very similar example, very similar to Sharpeville in the sense that this was something that was national. We had a number of protests happening in different parts of the country, and Soweto's uprising is emphasized at the expense of what was happening in other places. I think that there is not enough of an emphasis of who the various leaders were that were leading different actions at that time, and the nuances in the strategies that they took for the place in which they were working to suit the conditions of the nature of protest in those areas, right? There is definitely, I mean, shall we just address the sacred cow and say the narrative around these historical days is very much skewed also along party lines. So when we, you know, PAC, Black Consciousness Movement, and other formations other than the ANC was leading certain actions, the significance of what they did is generally diluted. I mean, that is the grand narrative. I also think that geographically, we emphasize certain places more than others. So Joburg, the urban areas, but also Joburg in particular, what has happened here is much more known to the average person on the street compared to what was happening in Pretoria or happening in other parts of the Transvaal. Eastern Cape was very, very, very active. I think it's only known to people who are from the Eastern Cape.
And I know that there was a discussion that I had with people from Africa on the day of June 16.
Yeah.
They actually claimed that one of the youngest persons who was shot killed, his name is, but his surname is Tsecho. The people from Africa, they claim that it's not actually activities. They say the youngest. But unfortunately, because the focus had been, I sit around with us again. Unfortunately, the focus has been on the other side of a certain people. And that's why when I was introducing the program, I mentioned those things. So Thabang, you're able to hear us?
Thabang, I can hear you. I have a very bad network. I'm sorry, but I can hear you.
Shall we just quickly run through? There are two things that I wanted to say about what was happening in the 60s before I come back to like what do we need to do now in 2023, and I'm going to run through it very quickly because I think some of these things will be known to you, but for the sake of completion, of being comprehensive. So Sharpeville Day is obviously about protest against the past laws, but the past laws and the past itself is just a symbol. right? And one of the things that I appreciate about Sobukwe is that he was somebody who could think systemically before systems thinking was even a major theory, right? He would look at the entirety of what is the impact of, the apartheid government, the apartheid regime, the apartheid laws, the apartheid economy on the people, and say, okay, what is the one thing I can do that can kill 10 birds with one stone? And he located that locus in the past laws, which I think is very, very instructive for us now. I think this is what we're seeing now with tomorrow, and how we've seen, like you said, people are willing to rise up again now in this week, because what we've been able to do is to find an issue that speaks to all of us, and then bring a number of strategies together in that one issue. So we're looking at, the load shedding case, right, tomorrow, led by Advocate Mugedoi. But it's not just about that case. It's also about the trade unions, right? It's also about political parties. It's also about community organizations. It's also about ordinary people deciding, okay, I'm just going to stay at home. I might not be on the streets, but by staying away, I'm making an impact. I'm saying something, right? So, but if you to zoom out again from the bread and butter issues for people and say, okay, but what are the two main thrusts of the strategy? It would be the law and economics. So on the one hand, Sobukwe was obviously critiquing rule of law. He was critiquing the character of the apartheid law itself. And, rule of law is a very, very convenient middle-class liberal excuse. To say that when you want change and fundamental change, you are automatically someone who is not in favor of order and you're an anarchist, which is a huge leap. Because the issue is not that we do not have orderliness. The issue is that the principles that underpin what is governing us all is unjust, unfair, inconsistent. I mean, it's not applied equally between all of us, because reality is, even right now, when we have so-called rule of law, it's not being applied equally to all people. When you're rich and connected, the law treats you a certain way, and when you're poor and have no access to resources, it teaches you a different way. So technically, we don't even really have rule of law right now either.
That's what Thabo was saying earlier, about the people who have been unjustly treated, even with reparations.
Yeah.
That's what we're saying. I think, Thabo, that's what we're saying, isn't it? Especially around the issue of
no, I'm following. I mean, especially around the issue of
reparations.
It's very around reparations. Listen, Jim, I mean, the Holocaust, people in victims of the Holocaust, I mean, their reparations was very good, and apparently there are some people getting reparations out of that. But here in South Africa, especially for the victims of the Sharpeville massacre, I mean, we must remember right now that what is happening in the country is that the country is being governed by the ANC government, which is not in favor of the Pan-Africanist Congress. And because of that,
why would you say it's not in favor?
I have that feeling that you don't want to talk. No man wants to tell another man's victory. So we are in that situation where the ANC government will not much talk about the Sharpeville massacre as a PAC movement that organized it. And when it comes, it will be more or less overlooked in most of the time, and especially the victims of that massacre will always be overlooked based on that. I think until that we have a government that's really true to itself about what happened, that takes the story very importantly, so that understand that the story of Sharpeville was not about the ANC, was not about the Pan-Africanist people, was not about the Pan-Africanist movement, but was for the black people of South Africa. So I think if they can look at it from that angle, and maybe possibly something can be done around the reparations. But I feel that what the money that they got for reparations for me was very little. That's one. And two, it has not even taken their kids to school, to the universities, or it has, or it has never been. It did not do any much in terms of improving their lives or their children or their grandchildren.
It makes sense.
It's a very sad history. I mean, it's a very sad story. And even if when you Hey?
The thing that made it, I think, or that makes it so easy for there to be so much unhappiness around reparations is what Kulumani Support Group has been saying. I mean, they've been pretty consistent in the way that they've been supporting victims of apartheid, that have been identified through the TRC process, and so to say that there has been no reparations policy, something as significant as dealing with the pain and the trauma and the repercussions of apartheid, which was declared a crime against humanity, right? Which was this massive injustice and existed for so many decades, cannot be left to haphazard, charitable gestures as an afterthought by various government departments. There needs to be a systematic program put in place that is guided by a policy, and that policy needs to have input from wide sectors of society. So we're coming back again to participation and public participation, because what you'll find is that around this reparations debate, input from the public and from so-called ordinary people of South Africa has not been taken into consideration at all, and it's been really couched in a lot of secrecy and lack of transparency, and made to be this top secret thing, which it doesn't have to be, because all of us have been affected by apartheid in this country. So all of us have a say about how we need to actually heal from what had happened, right?
That is wonderful. And in the remaining time, that is it's about 12 minutes, I would like you, Tawan and Tana, to have a conversation together on the various points that we have been discussing, and make this conversation between the two of you and the things that you would want being addressed, and the aspects of yourself, Tawan, and what must be done in the future, and how people must understand this particular process. I'm handing over to you, and you can drive it any way you want.
I've just really got 2 points. The first thing is, I mean, obviously we know the slogan from Sharpeville Day was no bail, no defense, no fine, right? Sobukwe was very, very strong about the fact that the people were going to wage this protest in the way that they see fit without any intermediaries, right? And they were going to be very strong about not giving in. So therefore, no bail, no defense, no fine. If you look at, and we didn't have a chance to talk about how apartheid was racialized capitalism, right? And how it was about setting up a particular economic system and using race as a logic to inform that hierarchy that would distribute wealth in a particular way, right? You cannot look at apartheid without looking at the economics of it. So I want to zoom in on no fine, because there was a number of things that I wanted to say about the economic aspect, but let me zoom in on no fine, because I think it links to what you were saying, Tabang, about how people are feeling right now that have lived through this and continue to not see any accountability, really. So at the time of the Sharpeville massacre, the fine for not carrying your pass was 2.5 months' wages, right? So if we just think that they say that from the 1800s to that time, there was probably about 15 to 20 million arrests for pass violations. And let's say that half of that were then asked to pay a fine, right? So we're looking at 10 million. And let's just say, for argument's sake, 2.5 months' wages works out to 10 Rand, right? So you take that 10 Rand and you times it by 10 million arrests that ended up in a fine, right? You get to 100 million Rand. So essentially, by that logic and using that as an example, Black South Africans contributed 100 million Rand to their own oppression. And that's staggering to think about, because it is actually at the heart of so much of what we hear when we look at a state or a government that doesn't do right by their people. And even to the extent where they perpetrate violence against their own people, right? That the people carry the burden of the brunt of that violence, right? Physically on their backs, right? Economically, by having to pay fines and having to deal with unjust social conditions and subpar wages, etc. And when I listen to you talk about what the people in Sharpeville are still saying now in 2023, they continue to pay for their own oppression, because no one, well, not no one, but I mean those that should be standing up and helping are not doing so, and not doing so with the amount of vigor I think that they should be doing.
Yes. And also, Tana, remember around during apartheid where we picked up again was that there was this law that was called poll tax, that was the only tax that was targeted at black people when there was something wrong in the economy. That tax would only be paid by black people, and that is one thing that was is very difficult. Also, if you bring it to today's date, that even the people of Sharpeville still feels that pain. That, you know what, it feels like at some stage we are still paying that tax that only is being brought to only black people, and especially knowing the struggle that they played, knowing what they have fought for, and that is not being seen happening, and it's very sad story, really. I think that as an independent filmmaker, we're still finding that story. We are still trying to tell that story as much as we can through film festivals. But it looks like no one is hearing this, and then we are seeing grandchildren now coming up. We are faced with a lot of drug addiction now with the young people in Sharpeville. We are faced with unemployment, and you know, those elements are very painful elements. Knowing that there were people who actually made sure that the struggle of the struggle for apartheid, or the struggle for democracy, was known because of Sharpeville. You know, the world had to know what was happening in South Africa because of Sharpeville. You understand? So, but there's little to show for that. There's little to show for that in this township. Even if you when you drive around, the dirt that you see around here, even when you get to the museum itself, the museum it's closed on weekends. It's not operating. You know, little bit of that tourism of attracting tourists into Sharpeville, that income is being closed by the same people who are saying they are running the country, who are saying they want to make employment. But
I mean, this is one of the things that I saw.
Those elements really killed
That's one of the things that I really saw very, very sharply when I was starting to work in the Vaal area, and I went to Sharpeville and I walked around there. It's very closed off. Working in the Vaal as in community work or working in the arts, culture, and heritage space in Vaal is very closed off. It's very, very, very much dominated by the Department of Arts and Culture, who have their own programs and own ideas about what they would like to do. But like you say, it just seems like there's going to be very little trickle-down effect for the people there. So you have the continued tax and price that the people are paying for their activism and for having stood up, and you see no reward coming on the other side. I mean, I find it also interesting that you had said that, Sharpeville was a very industrialized area with a lot of migrant black labor. Now, it is the black worker, right, according to socialism, and Sobukwe was a socialist, that has to be at the forefront of pushing for change, right? Because these are the people that are doing the labor to build the economy, but these are the people that are also experiencing the brunt of the oppression, right? And so we need to, I think, reignite that fire under the black working class in Sharpeville, and to say that actually those sacrifices are not in vain. Exactly what you said. I mean, there was Sharpeville was a turning point in terms of the international community. I didn't have a chance to speak about the impact of Sharpeville on international law, and how up until that point it was very much diplomacy focused. But after 1960, the UN Security Council itself came with a resolution, Resolution 134, to say that Sharpeville and the killing of black people there is morally reprehensible, and that the apartheid state is actually a threat to global peace and security. That is a massive achievement. It changed the trajectory of the liberation struggle completely. course, after that, we then began to see an intensification and, the turn from non-violent struggle to military, to armed struggle. So, yes, that Sharpeville is incredibly significant, but the people of Sharpeville do not get the credit that they deserve. For me, it comes down to, yes, thinking about how we're going to do reparations, how we're going to bring economic development to those people, but also changing the narrative and doing much more education with school kids, with people on the ground, so that people understand the significance of Sharpeville, but also that we push for the conditions that makes another Sharpeville less likely.
Yes. Yeah. You are right. I mean, if you think of the impact that Sharpeville made internationally, and then having to come to Sharpeville and seeing that, I don't know if it's the juxtaposition of that, it's very saddening. And also, if you understand from the departments of arts and culture that whatever programs that people of Sharpeville put forward, they are not recognized at all. But then they will be coming here with their own projects, with whatever that needs to be done. And how has that turned around is that it has become some kind of an economic opportunity, but in the same way, a tender type of a system. So the only time that people in Sharpeville get to enjoy what the little money around the 21st of March is when the Department of Arts and Culture comes with programs or comes with stage, and the ANC is going to go there and they're going to talk. And then they will have those tenders that they will take out, like, to supply toilets, to supply seats, to supply, to supply stage, to supply stage. That's the only time that thing happens. And just after that, I mean, people are back into poverty. There's no sustenance of that money that came in. I mean, the tourism is just in a disaster state. And yet, this is the platform. This is the most easiest way of bringing down unemployment. It's the most easiest way of doing it. But then the Department of Arts and Culture in itself is failing to develop that, and it's very shocking. There are training after training after training after training, and at one stage you ask, where is this training going to stop? When are people going to start working? When are we going to start seeing tourists coming into Sharpeville? And when is the time where are we starting to see those tourism leaving money in Sharpeville? It's fine. It's good enough for them to come in Sharpeville and go out, but are they leaving any money? Are people of Sharpeville, are their lives being improved in any way? And yet nothing like that happens. Nothing like that happens. You will see the only time that Sharpeville gets to be clean is during this time of the week, the 16th, 17th, and 18th. You will see lights being fixed. The lights on the main streets being fixed. The part. That's the only time you will see that. But after that, nothing happens. So I think we are in a great space now to start reigniting the energy of the people of Sharpeville, especially those that work or those that live here, to say, look, we are the cradle of human rights, and as the cradle of human rights, we should not be going through what we are going through right now. The unemployment rate as it is very high, but we can do something with the history that we have. We can do something with the monument so that we can make sure that something happens.
I see that. Just sorry to interject there. I want you guys to go towards your closing remarks, but I need you to address the issue of Sharpeville today as how would we then, what must be done? I see you, Tabang, saying Sharpeville is a mess, and it's not only Sharpeville. The entire country is a mess. The entire continent is a mess. Actually, the entire world is a mess. So what needs to be done from a community-based perspective, so that we can all be able to say, when we are born in this world, we have given our children something to hold on to going forward. I'll start with you, Tabang, as making your closing remarks while you are trying to answer this question, and then we'll get to Dana immediately after that.
Okay. First of all, I think the name Human Rights Day should be changed to Sharpeville Day. This will help in terms of history. This will help in terms of not diluting the history by just calling it the Human Rights Day. It is a Sharpeville Day. And I think from there, then we can have a sense of pride as people of Sharpeville about what had happened on that day. And then going forward, we need Sharpeville to to be the next place, the one of the places that can be visited, one of the destination, one of the most favorite destination in Gauteng. We need that. We need to see the monuments working. We need to see reparations being part of the dialogue, even in Parliament. About the victims of the massacre itself, and we need to see the exact number of people who were shot and who were killed, and who got affected by the massacre itself. And this is one of the most important history that we need to have in our archives. And moving forward, tourism should be one of the biggest money spinners for the people of Sharpeville. So we need to be concentrating on tourism and making sure that the museum works every day, 24 hours, and that in that way there will be something. I would probably be saying that at least there would be something that would have been done to those that took part in the massacre or who were the victims of them. But basically, for my start would be that the Human Rights Day should be changed to Sharpeville Day.
Yeah, thanks for that. And you have heard that the first point of departure is give the day its correct name. Dana, your closing remarks.
Thanks. I agree with you, Tabang. Changing the name of the day, emphasizing the impact of the day, getting the real facts, getting down to the truth of everything that happened on the day. I completely agree. I feel like, based on your comments about, what Sharpeville looks like today, I think we need to kind of interrogate, what do we think development actually is? Is development about creating government programs which encourages people to be dependent on government, right? Because then we're going to continuously recreate these conditions. Or is development about being people-centered, being people-led, having people identify what they want and giving them the skills and an enabling environment for that to happen, and integrating with all of the different groups and formations and peoples in Sharpeville to say, let's work together. So, you might be in tourism, you might, have like a restaurant or a catering thing, you might be in transport. What are all the different things that people are interested in and are really doing in Sharpeville? How do we bring that together? But then also to be strategic. What is the most effective way to make maximum impact, and how do we build on successes of the past? I mean, what you were saying about it having been a very industrialized place, how about reindustrializing it, right? How about building industries that are labor intensive and create jobs, right? Tourism is one sector, but there are a number of other sectors that we can think about reigniting in the Sharpeville area. Sobukwe said that development is about changing the material conditions of people. If the material conditions of people have not changed, then we haven't done anything meaningful. So that would be my closing remarks, to get back to people power, to be strategic, and to persevere. I mean, Sobukwe suffered a lot of things, and he encouraged all of us to be willing to sacrifice for the betterment of South Africa.
And I see that the closing remarks here are fundamentally saying we must adopt an ideology of humanism, an ideology of being human-centered, an ideology of being humanistic. And I heard that from you, Tabang, and I heard that from you, Dana. Colleagues, thank you very much for being part of this conversation. I hope you enjoyed it. Tabang, I hope you were able to enjoy it, even though we had some technicalities there. Thank you very much, my brother, for making the time. And,
I did not get that. I did not get that at all. My network is very bad. I did not get that at all.
No, it's okay. It's okay. I was just saying thank you.
It might be something. We said something that is very nice. Oh, thank you.
No, I was saying something very nice.
Thank you very much, Dana. Also, thank you very much to Dana. Also,
thanks, Tabang.
Yeah, and thank you very much to you, Dana, for this wonderful conversation. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and we know that technology has got its own tricks. But thank you very much, and I enjoyed your inputs as well.
Thank you so much for having me, and it was really great to be on this platform with you, Thabang.
And colleagues and friends, viewers at home, those who are watching with us on the Political,
Thank you very
YouTube,
much.
Twitter, Facebook, and any other platform that you are watching with us, I hope you had enjoyed every minute and every moment of this conversation. And I hope that you have learned something. One of the things that has come out very strongly is the fact that be human-centered, change the day to give it its significance, but also at the same time, learn from all those strategies that were put in place. And we know for sure that tomorrow people are going out, they are going to go and for a protest and a shutdown, whatever you call it. And whatever the case might be, whatever decision that they make, it is up to them. The people have made a decision. If people do not want to be part and parcel of that conversation of the protest, it's still up to them. But one of the things that we're saying is it's always good to find something that affects all of you and stand against that. And we must learn from that particular aspect. And I'm glad that I was part of this conversation. And thank you very much for joining us. Remember, I keep on saying every day, subscribe to our Born the Politic channel on YouTube. Just click, it won't charge you anything. It will help us grow and expand our networking. The last thing that I want to announce, you look at this t-shirt that we're wearing, as Born the Politic and Israel too, we are selling these. These are our merchandise. If you like it and if you see that it is something that you could you could wear, and make contact with us. We're available on Facebook, Twitter, and any other platform. These are there's different types of these merchandises, hoodies, sweaters, pens, and all that you can think of. You can make contact with us, and then we can be able to ensure that you get your wonderful merchandise. Uti, once again, thank you very much, and we appreciate that you were part and parcel of this conversation. We'll see you once again next week. Bye-bye, and all the best.